For more than 30 years, Swiss decompression science advanced not through spectacle, but through patience, from depth to depth, from test to test, in cold mountain lakes and in open sea, in silence, under pressure. At the University Hospital of Zurich, inside the Druckkammer, dives were not imagined. They were measured, bodies observed, limits respected. There was no search for records, no desire for heroics, only one question asked again and again. How do we bring divers back safely? Through thousands of hours, through discipline and doubt, a model slowly emerged, one that understood depth and altitude, time and pressure, human physiology in all its complexity, not a theory, a system. Today, this Swiss decompression model remains the foundation of modern dive safety worldwide, quietly present, often unseen, always trusted. This film is about the science that keeps people alive and about the man who refused to accept anything less than certainty.
During our test dives at Mutze at 2,500 meters above sea level, the highest one in Europe, one of the candidates unfortunately developed some kind of very harmless skin bends. And Bühlmann called me and said, "You have to look at that." And the candidate was sitting there with their upper body and his back was red. Bühlmann said, "Look at it, look at that. Like in the book, wonderful, wonderful." Not to the pleasure of the candidate, however, but it really looked like in the book. So the scientists in him broke through. The second one was when he called me in my office. He said, "Mr. Müller, I have to tell you some news." I said, "Oh, what's up?" "Yeah, I was contacted by NASA, the American National Administration for Space." I said, "Well, space? What the heck is that?" He said, "Yeah, they have problems with decompression with the astronauts." I said, "Astronauts and decompression has nothing to do with diving." I said, "Yes, but these guys are living in an almost normal atmosphere. They saturated with nitrogen, and in the spacesuit you have just the pressure of equal to 7,000 meters above sea level. So these poor guys would spoil, all the nitrogen would bubble up. Oh, yes, they have to decompress for 2 to 4 hours. And like this, he was contacted by NASA and gave them some advice.
As a young diving doctor and an instructor, a diving instructor, I was already following Professor Bühlmann's work since well before the publication of his recreational diving tables in '87. So I knew about the experiments with deep diving, artificial gas mixtures, and so on. And when the tables were finally published, which was in 1987, if I am not wrong, I started thinking to actually contact Professor Bühlmann to participate in an event of the Daniel Foundation to celebrate diving safety. In 1993, we celebrated the 10th anniversary of our organization. And I thought to invite Professor Bühlmann, and I sort of timidly sent him a letter expecting a refusal because he may have had not time enough or so on. And to my surprise, he was so kind to accept that wholeheartedly. And so we celebrated the 10th anniversary of our organization together with him, who presented and described in detail his algorithm, and together with Professor Peter Bennett. I remember going to pick him up at the airport of Florence. And when we first met, he was a bit stiff. But then we started talking about common interests, common passion, algorithms, decompression sickness, diving safety, and so on. And he really softened up, he melted. And we ended up the day with a very friendly, mutual, respectful relationship. And then he also was, as a surprise, rewarded with our first Dan Europe Foundation Award for Excellence in Diving Science. And that was a great honor for us. After that, we kept having a very good relationship, professional, scientific, and also human, until he unfortunately passed away only a few months after that celebration of our decade of activity in 1993.
Well, my father grew up in Berlin, Germany, during the Second World War. He had a difficult time there, and he came then to Switzerland as a student. He had to finish the studies. Nobody expected him in Zurich, but he did it. He fought for the exam, and he then became a doctor at the University Hospital of Zurich, and he was interested in science. He was not a doctor who wanted to be on always with ill people, and he was interested about new areas where scientists, medical scientists, could change something in the world. And he started with Sportler, as example, Olympic Games in St. Moritz, 48, and he was interested about high performance in the altitude. And then he was involved in the introduction of jet fighters, Swiss Army, because they faced new problems in the altitude. But then something special happened. A young student came, asked him a question. He wanted to go down to 300 meters as a diver, and he asked the question, is this possible? Everybody tells him, no, it's not possible. And after thinking a little, he came back, my father, and told him, yes, it is possible. We have to change something which nobody thought before. And this was something which was really special. He never believed to theories which were accepted by everybody. He was critical. So he then started with Hannes Keller's diver, and they went down in few years from 120 meters in the Lake of Zurich, and in the pressure chamber in Toulon and in Washington to 300 meters. And I think most of the divers know this dive in California, Catalina Island, when they went to 1,000 feet. And in principle, they proved that it's possible. This resulted in interest of completely different people. And before it was the army, now it was the industry. And the industry, as a gas and oil industry, were interested to go in the continental shelf for exploiting oil and gas, and they were able to make a research contract with Shell. And the target of the research contract was to go down to 700 meters, saturation dives, and they started, and the research took place in Zurich until 1981. This was the moment when people, on one side, the industry, but also my father realized that deep diving was not any longer so important. Deep divers could be replaced by robotics, and So he was interested in something else. And again, young people came to him and told him, is it not possible to build an algorithm which allowed to calculate decompression real time? And he said, yeah, why not? We think about it. We have the data material of more than 500 test times in the laboratory. We use this data and we start. And then the first dive computers, Swiss dive computers, came on the market. They were quite successful. One company was Uvatec with Aladdin Pro and Aladdin RX. And he was consultant of this company until the last day of his life, because he announced the last diving computers months before he died. He worked 70 years. He was scientist 70 years. Not 70. He was a child, but for 50 years he was a successful researcher. And I think it's very special. He was always critical. He challenged everything. He was very direct vis-à-vis other peoples, and he was focused.
Also 1980 haben Beat und ich beschlossen, einen Tauchkurs zu machen. Dann kam es zur Sprache, weil Beat Heuschnupfen hatte. Oh, das geht ja gar nicht mit Tauchen, das verträgt sich nicht. Dann wurde mir empfohlen, Professor Bühlmann anzurufen. Ich habe dann das gemacht und kam tatsächlich zu ihm. Der hat mir dann gesagt, wo ist Ihr Problem? Schildern Sie mal. Da habe ich gesagt, ja, mein Mann hat Heuschnupfen und wir wissen nicht, ob das machbar ist, dass er einen Tauchkurs macht. Dann war kurze Stille und dann sagte er, gute Frau, meinen Sie eigentlich, ich gebe Ihnen eine Auskunft über eine Person, die ich nicht kenne und Heuschnupfen hat und ich sage Ihnen, ja klar, der kann tauchen gehen und dann bin ich schuld, wenn was passiert. Nein, da gebe ich Ihnen keinen Rat. Ich war dann erschrocken. Ich dachte, oh, dann ist es tatsächlich so, wie viele sagen, der Professor Bühlmann gibt nicht gerne Auskünfte. Ich habe dann gesagt, ja gut, okay, danke schön. Dann hat er wahrscheinlich Erbarmen gehabt mit mir und hat gesagt, okay, rufen Sie noch mal an, wenn es halt gar nicht geht. Und wurde dann das Telefonat beendet. Das war der erste Eindruck, den ich von Professor Bühlmann hatte. Dass sich unsere Wege nochmals kreuzen würden, hätte ich zu diesem Zeitpunkt nicht gedacht.
My father wanted to do something which made the world better. He wanted to be a scientist who could do something to improve life. At the end, he did different things, but one thing was really diving. And I think what he wanted to was to make diving safer for professional divers, but also for amateur divers. And he was very focused on this. He used his limited resources financially and also time, and he had to optimize these resources to get to this result. And this was something which made him very special. He was very focused. He was very critical vis-a-vis the existing knowledge. He criticized, also he tried to criticize, to take this in question. And this, I think, was very special on his side. And he was, maybe he was not so an open person, but he was very open vis-a-vis young people who had good ideas. So he had this relation with Hannes Keller as a diver, but then he had relations to young engineers, software engineers, hardware engineers, which wanted to develop dive computers. And he was always open to speak to these people and to work with these people together. And one person is here was also Beat Müller, which you might know. And I think these relations were very important for him. But what I think, and that is was one thing which I realized also, he was very courageous. He never feared to get to do something which was also quite risky, and even when situations became more and more difficult, he became more and more quiet and focused. I remember a situation where we had breakfast at home, and he got a call. I think it was 1974, and a military officer called him, and they had a severe accident at the Silvana Lake near St. Moritz, 2,000 meters. It was the first moment that they started with young soldiers and diving, and they used tables which were for sea level, and two of the divers had severe accidents, and they called him. He was in Zurich, and he was very focused. And then he started to give advice what they have to do. They had a pressure chamber in Silvaplana. And I was very impressed because there are two people, maybe they risked their life. They risked that they became invalid, and he was only focused to give precise advices through telephone. And this impressed me. It was not the only situation. I saw different other situations in the same manner, and this was very special.
The first part, he was a very, very serious scientist. He was devoted to decompression research, to put things further on, to make diving safer. In the second part of his personality, he was a very modest and very humble man. I had the unique chance to get closer to him during our long cooperation, and I was very impressed of his personality. He was really a man devoted to do some good, to put the decompression research further on. He was a very impressive man.
Ich habe Professor Bühlmann als sehr spannenden, interessanten Mann kennengelernt. Mit einem, wenn man ihn näher kannte, mit einem sehr großen Herz. Im ersten Augenblick hat man das Gefühl gehabt, man kommt nicht an ihn ran. Und wenn man mit ihm gesprochen hat und so, hat man wirklich das Gefühl gehabt, oder es war auch so, dass er versteht, was man meint. Auch wenn er ja ein sehr, sehr gebildeter Mann war, ich eine einfachere Person, habe ich nie das Gefühl gehabt, er versteht mich nicht. Im Gegenteil. So habe ich ihn kennengelernt.
Dr. Bühlmann was very close to the people. He was not a far remote scientist somewhere in an office, far away from the rest of the world. He came to the test dives, Mutze, whatever, Lucendro. So he was a part of the diving community. Even if he never did any dive in his life. But we respected him as part of us. That made him very popular within the diving community.
I think what I realized very soon is a doctor has not only a stethoscope. A doctor can have also a calculator and a computer, and that was very strange for me at the beginning, but I realized that a doctor can do a lot of things when he starts to calculate. And my father he used his instruments to finally find the solution which he wanted to find. And I think this was special. And I think what was also special is he was not an open and easygoing person, and but when he found that somebody has interesting ideas and was interested in areas which was also of interest for him, he was very open, and he was not the professor. He was Bühlmann, and he opened the door. He was time, and he worked very closely with these people. And this is, I think, what was really special on his side.
In der Zwischenzeit hatte ich keinen Kontakt mehr mit Professor Bühlmann, aber Beat war natürlich sehr involviert. Professor Bühlmann hat dann gefragt, ich brauche nicht nur Männer für diese Testauchgänge, ich brauche auch Frauen, weil sie sich ja anders verhalten beim Tauchen. Beat hat natürlich sofort gesagt, ja klar, meine Frau, oder die kann da mitmachen. Professor Bühlmann hat mich dann selber gefragt und das hat mich eigentlich sehr stolz gemacht, weil ich war ja kein Instruktor, ich war ja eine normale Sporttaucherin. Ich habe sofort zugesagt, ich habe gefunden, sehr spannend, oder? Und macht man mal mit. Wir haben dann auch noch andere Testauchgänge gemacht und ich habe immer diese Profile mitgetaucht, die Beat uns zur Aufgabe gemacht hat. Es kam dann so weit, dass der Mutsee anstand auf 2500 Meter, Bergseetauchen. Und da auch hat mich Herr Professor Bühlmann gefragt, ob ich da Lust hätte, mitzumachen. Natürlich war ich sofort dabei. Ich denke mir, ich war wirklich stolz, dass er mich persönlich gefragt hat. Diese Testauchgänge auf dem Mutsee waren absolut spitze. Ich habe auch sehr Achtung gehabt vor Herrn Professor Bühlmann, weil wir haben beschlossen, zu Fuß mal darauf zu gehen. Beat hat dann gesagt, ich laufe mal rauf. Dann habe ich gesagt, ich auch, ich laufe rauf. Und das war ja auf 2500 Meter. Und Professor Bühlmann war ja zu diesem Zeitpunkt auch nicht mehr der Jüngste. Und er hat gesagt, wenn ihr läuft, dann komme ich auch. Wir sind dann da ruhig raufgelaufen und haben wirklich eine gute, sehr tolle Zeit gehabt da oben. Die Testauchgänge mussten sehr präzise sein, das hat er dann verlangt. Wer mitmacht, hält sich an die vorgegebenen Tauchplanungen, an die gegebenen Zeiten, die da angegeben wurden, Tiefen und Aufstiegsgeschwindigkeiten. Das hat er ganz klar und deutlich jedem mitgeteilt. Und das haben wir auch eingehalten und ja, dann kamen diese Tauchgänge da oben zustande. Also ganz sicher musste man Vertrauen ins Modell haben, das uns gegeben wurde. Das haben wir gehabt und man musste sich bewusst sein, ja, dass zu jeder Zeit etwas passieren könnte, weil wir auf dieser Höhe, auf 2500 Meter, keine bisher solchen Profile getaucht sind. Ich habe diese Angst nie gehabt. Ich habe einfach das Vertrauen ins Modell und auch in Beat, der diese Tabellen ja gerechnet hat, das war gegeben. Man war sich aber immer bewusst, es kann immer etwas passieren. Das ist ganz klar. Aber es war sehr interessante Zeit, sehr lehrreiche Zeit und es hat auch eine Sicherheit für mich als Taucherin, als Testtaucherin gegeben. Weil ich habe keine Symptome gehabt, es ist alles gut gegangen. Also das erste war, dass Professor Bühlmann diese Tabellen neu berechnet hat. Ich sehr großes Vertrauen in dieses Modell hatte und es mich mit Stolz erfüllt hat, dass er mich überhaupt gefragt hat, weil zu diesem Zeitpunkt möchte oder wollte er auch Frauen bei diesen Testtauchgängen dabei haben. Zu diesem Zeitpunkt gab es nicht viele Frauen, die da mitgemacht haben. Und zwar benötigte es dazu sehr viele Taucherfahrung im sportlichen Bereich, Mut, bei einem solchen Testtauchgängen überhaupt mitzumachen, weil eigentlich niemand zu diesem Zeitpunkt wusste, was passieren könnte. Mich hat es sehr angesprochen, in dieser Gruppe mitzumachen, auch weil ich sicher von den Brevetierungen her am wenigsten Erfahrung hatte. Also ich bin kein Instruktor gewesen. Und es hat mich gereizt, auch zu zeigen, dass ich viele Testtauchgänge schon mitgemacht hatte und ich mich dort auch einbringen konnte, auch wenn ich nicht ein Instruktor war. Das hat mich auch gereizt, muss ich sagen. Es hat mich auch gereizt, die Modelle, die ich gesehen habe, und wir haben sehr, zum Teil krasse Modelle getaucht. In einem See, der keine Sicht hatte, da war null Sicht. Und man ging rauf und runter und musste voll auf die Tabellen vertrauen. Darum hat es mich mit Stolz erfüllt, dabei zu sein. Passiert ist Gott sei Dank bei mir gar nichts. Ich hatte weder Symptome noch irgendetwas. Also bei mir ist das alles gut ausgegangen.
I think the condition, the situation in Switzerland was quite different from these hotspots like the US and also UK and France with respect to research in the medical area. Diving was not of interest in Switzerland. Nobody was interested in diving, and so he had no limits from the community, the science community, and he could do it in this way how he wanted it to do. So and I think this was a great chance. On the other side, he got some freedom as a scientist in Switzerland. Switzerland is quite open, and what was also special was, I think, he got a lot of freedom regarding organizing these research activities. He financed everything by sponsors. He never got subsidized. He never got subsidized at the beginning of this research during the first 20 years, and this was something which is not so, it's not normal that you can negotiate with sponsors contracts and start and research in this area. But Switzerland allowed him to do this, and this is maybe one of the reasons why Switzerland and he became successful.
First of all, the missing link was there were not too many data on diving at diminished atmospheric pressure. That means high altitude. Because so far, mostly military organizations like US Navy, the British Navy, etc., made such research. And for the Navy, diving starts at 0 meter altitude. They had no data about diving in the mountains. On the other side, in Switzerland, diving at high altitude is commonplace. It's a commodity. Everyone dives at high altitudes. Our lowest lake has an altitude of about 300 meters, and the top of Europe is at 2,500 meters, the Mutze. So the interest in the diving community, but worldwide, was how is decompression at high altitudes? And this is the gap we tried to fill at that time. And because of the great interest also in the diving community, it was very easy to get test divers. Just a call on the phone. hey, are you interested to do some test dives? Yes, put me on the list. And so we got a large amount of divers, men, women, young, old, sporty, unsport, every kind. And this makes the model much safer. You can enlarge the application and the test envelope. And this model has been verified on everything you can imagine you can ever do as a diver. Bühlmann tested the model down to 575 meters. We dove at 4,500 meters above sea level. No one else has ever done. Work is a point. It was tested with tunnel construction, 8 hours per day at 2 bars, 3 bars. So you have an application envelope. It's hard to describe. Never ever was that done before.
I think Constellation was maybe different. He was alone. He had not an institute or an organization behind him. He was not an officer, a medical officer of a research lab in France or in UK or in the US. But he had some ideas, and he had also the freedom to think free. And the other side is he was able to convince certain people, which allowed him then to start research in an environment which was not comparable to the other places in the world, where they had much more resources, but maybe he had some very good ideas. And he took his chance, and he delivered. He delivered very fast, as I mentioned already. I think he delivered one record after the other regarding the deep divers, and later then he had delivered regarding calculation algorithms which allowed to produce dive computers. And this was different, and what maybe also was different, he could research in a quite free environment. The government of the Swiss of Zurich allowed him to do research, and nobody gave him limits. And he used this freedom, and this was a chance, and he took this chance.
It's a long story because it dates back to 1993 when we first met when I first met Professor Bühlmann and started discussing his algorithm. In that very year, we started collecting real data from the dives of divers who donated, we said, the research to, donated their dive to research. All these data were electronically analyzed using the Bühlmann algorithm in order to identify risk factors that would be associated with decompression sickness and define the risk level of decompression sickness. Now we have achieved an unprecedented 150,000 fully monitored dives that we could compare with 650 decompression illness accidents equally monitored with the same procedures. So, and this implies not only mathematical monitoring, so to understand the supersaturation at the end of the dive, to see what level of M value, at what level of M value fraction the dive has ended, but we also started including personal data through a questionnaire and through our physiological research done before, after, and that's normal, but during the dive, and that's our prerogative. because we monitor all these factors, including the evolution of the time depth factor product during the dive itself. This has allowed us to develop a model which is both physiologically and probabilistically driven, based on the physiological data and on the epidemiological data. And so this is now the goal, to develop an ideal modality of diving and decompression, to develop a probabilistic and physiologically based model to improve the diving safety, and to eventually arrive to an ideal or perfect algorithm to personalize diving risk.
What you have seen is science shaped by responsibility, by precision, by respect for human limits. A legacy begun by Dr. Albert A. Bühlmann, carried forward by Swiss science and those who continue his mission to make diving safer for generations to come.